And you are now live, it says. We are telling your followers that you have started a live video. Because I wasn't sure if I'm going to go live or I'm going to go into a practice mode. So I'm live. Good evening, everyone. We are back with Ask the Expert series. And I'm going to try and invite Cathriona. Here, we might wait another moment. And so today I have Cathriona Hodgins back on the live series with a little bit of a different topic. So we will be talking. Hey! Hello! How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good, good. So I was just about to say what we will be talking about today. So let me just finish that and then we can get right into it. So today we will be talking pre-diabetes and diabetes, and we may actually get to mention gestational diabetes. If you're talking to me, this is not something you can skip because I have been through that, and I think I can definitely hear and know the struggle of a pregnant woman craving everything which they cannot have. So hopefully we will be talking about all this. If you have any questions, please send it on in the live. Or I do have another phone here, so you can send it on somewhere else as well. I'm very well prepared, and I will have loads of questions. So, but I also think Cathriona has prepared with some very important things that needs to be said. So we probably better start. How are you?
Great. I'm good, and thank you for having me back
And
again.
thank you for coming back to us again.
Yes, and great to be talking about this really important subject. And I was kind of looking up the stats just to see. I was wondering to myself how many people in Ireland actually have diabetes because I didn't know. And I had a look at, there's an ongoing study happening out of Trinity College in Dublin, the TILDA study. So it's a study of aging. It's been going on for a number of years now. And so they keep releasing data every so often. So the latest that I learned from that study was that 10% of adults over 50 years of age have type 2 diabetes. And then
Yes,
increases again.
sorry for interrupting. I have done a study. I have looked up numbers as well, but apparently it's not even true because there's so many unregistered or unknown. So there's so much more than what is already registered. So I've been trying to look up the
Yes. Yes, so there's a lot of people that may not realize that they're maybe
Mm.
possibly pre-diabetic at the stage before they're full into diabetes. And it's also more common in men than women. And I would have thought it was the opposite actually until I did my little research. So more common in men. But a lot of people are undiagnosed. And it can be a difficult one to know the signs. You know, the signs can be similar to other things, you know, just feeling tired a lot. You know, we often feel tired. We can be tired for many reasons. So that's one of the signs, feeling tired, but also maybe kind of finding it hard, having frequent infections, finding that wound healing isn't as good as it used to be. Poor wound healing, cutting yourself, or you know, getting scratches and it's taking ages for them to heal. You know, that's a possible sign, but it can be difficult for us to pick up on it. You know, if you're
Is there other signs? You say yes, the wound healing, and then the tiredness, and do they always have these signs? So these always come with it.
Yeah, they may not. He may not have any of those signs. You know, some of my clients have often said to me, you know, I just went in for regular blood checks and I found out I was pre-diabetic. You know, and they had no particular symptoms, or they weren't aware of their symptoms. You know, they might have felt tired and just thought nothing of it. You know,
And do you think someone who's, let's say, overweight or have like overweight, do they at a higher risk? Should they be checking it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of risk factors. When we're over 45, that's a risk factor. If we have a parent or a sibling with type 2 diabetes, and we're talking about type 2 particularly tonight, then that's a risk factor. A high BMI, body mass index, so if we're overweight, puts us at risk. If we have long-term health issues, maybe using a lot of steroids, long-term steroid use, that puts us at risk, and having high blood pressure. So if you know that maybe you're in a risk category, or you know you have a parent with diabetes and you're a certain age and you've high blood pressure and you're overweight, these are all risks. And so that's something that we should be thinking about if we have a number of those risk factors. Gestational diabetes. So I know that's something that you struggled with, Timmy. A lot of women do. So if there was gestational diabetes, so that's during a pregnancy, having difficulties controlling blood sugar, and maybe leading to using, you know, diabetic medication during the pregnancy, that can put you at risk later on in life of
Yeah.
diabetes.
Yeah, we were told, about obviously when I was told I had gestational diabetes, then they got me in for the test because my grandmother had diabetes and she had a very unmanaged diabetes, unfortunately, and I have seen her changing a lot in the years, and she just loved her food, unfortunately, and I don't think she got proper support, to be honest with you. And it definitely affected her mental health and everything. So it wasn't nice to see that. But so they got me in, and then I said, you know, when they got me drink the sugar liquid, I said, I'm 100% going to react to that, because by then I wasn't eating carbs for other reason, obviously. And then I felt awful. But then they get you in for, they lecture you to say what to eat and what not to eat. And then, well, but you know, they also say you have a bigger chances of actually getting stuck with diabetes after even the pregnancy. And like that, they wanted me to go back after the pregnancy for a checkup. And you might say I'm silly or not, but I refused. And I said, I'm happy the way I am, and I'm happy the way I eat, because I was told during that lecture at the beginning of my pregnancy, then they said, you know, you have gestational diabetes, and we were shown the food pyramid, and then we were told all sorts of things. And I was told, your baby needs the carbs, you need to eat your carbs. And then I said it to myself, okay. They kind of got me thinking, and I said, okay, if they say I need the carbs or the baby more, I will try and have a bowl of porridge. And that's my test all the time, a bowl of porridge, because I love my porridge. And I felt awful. And
Yeah.
then I just said, you know, this is not for me. I don't know what they say. I went through my pregnancy fully low carb, and they just, every time they got me back, and they said, your results are perfect, we don't know what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing, and all should be fine. And then I was fine. But I believe I'm probably or I'm not, you know, I never went back. I personally don't believe in diabetes care at the minute in the hospital, but I think it has to do a lot with when these nurses and doctors learned, and what they learned is not relevant anymore. But yeah, we can't really talk about that, but it's just my own personal
Yeah.
experience.
And
I had a very happy low carb pregnancy, and I really enjoyed that.
science as well. And well, let's just talk a minute about what is diabetes. You
Yeah.
know, you said there when you would have your bowl of porridge, you felt terrible, and that's another sign. How do you feel after carbs?
Mm-hmm.
You know, me, I feel exhausted after my breakfast, or I'm exhausted after my lunch. That's a real sign to tune into, take note of. You may not be diabetic, you could be pre-diabetic, or you could be just really sensitive to carbohydrate and glucose, and maybe you just need to manage it a little bit. But that's something to really tune into. When I hear somebody saying that to me, you know, I think, okay, we need to really look at how much carbs is in your diet. So diabetes, what is it? So when we take in a carbohydrate, bread, pasta, porridge, fruit, veg, they're all carbohydrate sources. Our pancreas is triggered and to release insulin. And insulin is a really important hormone in the body. And its job is to deal with the glucose that is broken down and released from those carbohydrates. So it deals with the glucose by either sending it to the blood, to the blood vessels to help us if we're active, and direct it onto the muscles, for example. If we're not too active, it might direct it to the liver to be stored, a short-term storage, and that might go to longer-term storage, and that glucose could be stored as fat in the body.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, a lot of it is used up in a well-functioning pancreas and glucose system. It should be used. But in something like diabetes, we suddenly become very sensitive, or if we're taking in too much carbohydrate, too much refined sugars maybe as well, then our pancreas is not able, there's not enough insulin to deal with the amount of glucose that's coming in. So this is purely, I would say in a lot of cases, a pre-diabetic stage. It can be totally reversed by managing diet and looking at how much carbohydrate is in your day, how you react to it. Do you have a big slump after porridge? I would have a slump. I would be tired after porridge. I would be hungry after porridge. A bowl of porridge does nothing.
I was always hangry, but I like that. In a blink of an eye, I would say, I need food now,
Yes.
or I die feeling, that sort of a thing.
I grew up in Ireland. In Ireland, this was the breakfast of champions for everybody, porridge, But I feel I do so much better when I have a high protein breakfast. So eggs in the morning are much better for me than something like, Weetabix or cereals or oats. So, you know, we need to think about how we deal with those carbohydrates, how we feel. And that's a big sign of not just diabetes, but how well we manage, you know, how well we manage and use the glucose coming from carbohydrates.
So ask a question there. So it is basically what we do, because I tell you what I used to do after. So I had a very hectic life. I was working in the beauty, but I would be doing beauty treatments 12 hours a day or sometimes more. But I had issues with my head. I had reflux. I had extreme gas. But it was all like very bad burping, and I literally was working around above clients. And what I would do is not to eat, so I wouldn't have the burping and I wouldn't have to deal with all the inconvenience of all that. And then in the evening, so I used to smoke actually. So I would have my coffee, because I used to
All
drink
coming out now.
because I used to drink coffee as well, which I don't. I don't drink coffee, I don't smoke, I don't do any unhealthy habits anymore. So I used to do that. So I used to have my coffee all day. I never really took sugar in my coffee. So coffee, cigarette, and in the evening, after not eating all day, 1 or 2 croissants, sometimes even a pecan little thing from Lidl. And so do we mess it up? So did I, like, obviously I messed it up for my staff, and then I wasn't sure
Big
if
gaps and then carbs, yeah.
yeah, so because I also had an overactive thyroid and I was trying to put it together, is it like my pancreas? I really messed it up with the way I was treating my body and eating, and that had an effect on my thyroid, or it works the other way around, they say. But I believe, so I basically, well, clearly I didn't have a healthy diet, and like basically the minute I changed my diet and I cut out the carbs and I was watching was what I was eating, I took the coffee out, I upped the protein, like my symptoms disappeared, and that was only an accident. I stumbled on it. But so do people mess it up for themselves,
Yeah.
or?
I mean, we tend to go, the carbs are the quick fixes. You know, when we want something quick, we don't have time to cook, we're grabbing things on the go. It's the carbs that you see, you know, that you can pick up in shops and stores and garages. And so it's easy to have a lot of carbs when we have a very busy, you know, lifestyle and we're not really focused on our diet and nutrition. And this can be the root cause of a lot of diabetes or pre-diabetes. And it's about not having to take out all the carbs and not having to take out all the nice things, certainly if you're at, you know, early stages. But it's balance, getting that balance, bringing in the protein, bringing in more fiber. You know, when you have carbs and protein together, it's very different in the body. You're not getting those big spikes, those big blood sugar spikes. And it's those blood sugar spikes that are dangerous for blood vessels and can lead us to heart disease, you know, diabetes and heart disease.
Yeah, there's a really good book, and I remember when we met in person the very first time, the first thing what you said it to me, did you read this book? And that's, you know, the French author, um Glucose Revolution. And that was something I found very interesting first, because, you know, I meet a lot of people who are told to reduce carbs for a number of reasons. And there's part of them, a lot of them would be diabetic, type 1, type 2, pre-diabetes, gestational diabetes. And I tell them, you know, even if you find it very, very difficult and you want, I don't know, whatever that might be. You want a chocolate, or you want the jam, or you want a donut or something, and you just feel you have to have it. It's just have a carrot before, or have an egg before. And that's what I'm trying to do with the kids as well. My kids don't eat a lot of sugar, but my little one found something from Christmas in the cupboard, and she just wanted it today. And I said, you can have it after breakfast. You eat your eggs and bacon. You can have the sweet. I don't mind, because obviously it's going to have a very different effect on your blood sugars. But like little things like that, and people are not aware. Yeah.
Adding a bit more like your baking mixes. I'm looking at your poster behind you. You know, your baking mixes are high protein, they're high fiber,
Yeah.
they're low carb. You know, and you know, I guess your struggle with, you know, the gestational diabetes probably eventually led you on to starting your business and your baking and all your lovely mixes and getting you to where you are now with your business. But it's having those kind of mixes, and you know, makes it so easy for people. And the kind of ingredients that you're using, you know, really changes the whole blood sugar. So that we can have, you know, the sweet treats, but when there's more fiber in them and less sugar in them, it's very different. You know, so but there's things we can do if we are having a sweet treat. You know, when I'm talking to pre-diabetic clients, and you know, I remember clients saying to me, "It's my birthday. I want to go out. I want to have a drink. I want to have a dessert." And I said, that's okay, go enjoy your night out, do it, but walk afterwards, you know. So she had her nice dinner and her wine, and I told her to park her car 20 minutes away from the restaurant so that she would walk that 20 minutes, and she's moving those, rather than getting a big peak of glucose, that she's moving the sugars through her system. It's going to her muscles. Her body is sensing she's moving, and she's going to use a lot of that glucose. So there's all these little hacks that you can use.
And that was something, sorry, that was very new to me, because like that, even though I have seen my grandmother going through it all, she was very overweight. So the last thing she ever did is to move. And obviously she never watched her diet, and she was on insulin and all that. But so when I had gestational diabetes, that was the first time when I got a glucose monitor, because they had to check my bloods all the time. And the first when they got me in for the the lecture about what you should do when you have gestational diabetes, they said the exercise. But I only realized how great it was after I actually checked my sugar, and even like went out and washed the car, and then I checked my sugar again,
Yeah.
and it dropped insanely. And that people, if you can manage your blood sugar, sometimes all you need to do is get your arse up
Yes.
and walk for 10 minutes or 20.
Yeah, if you find yourself having a big slump after your lunch, get up, walk for 10 minutes and just see how you feel. It'll even help, it'll help with your focus for the afternoon. But rather than, that glucose peaking and affecting you, moving your body, and it doesn't have to be a big class for an hour. A 10-minute walk can make all the difference. But that's a huge thing. How you eat your meal, not having a fully kind of loaded carb dish like a big bowl of pasta, but having some protein with it, having a bit less of the pasta, having some veggies with it, or a salad with it. Even the order that you eat now has been shown to make a difference to blood sugar spikes. So eating the protein first, then the veggies or the salad, and then the carbohydrate. And not that you have to have a gap between them, but that you're just eating them in a different order.
And so, so Tammy, so pre-diabetes is reversible.
Yes, totally. I mean, that's the stage. And how would you know if you're pre-diabetic? So if you're going in for bloods, maybe you feel that you're sensitive to carbs, or maybe you haven't had blood tests in a while, go and have your bloods checked. They will do a fasting glucose. So you will go in fasted, and they will do a fasting glucose, which will only really show a short-term view, maybe the last 12 hours of what your glucose is like. But so that's one, very quick test. But they'll also do what's known as the hemoglobin A1C. So HbA1C, you'll see it on your blood tests. And I would encourage people to request their blood tests and look at their data, keep a copy of it, and monitor how they are from one checkup to the next. The HbA1C is a look at how much glucose is in your red blood cells, and your red blood cells only turn over every 12 weeks or so. So this is a really nice snapshot of what your blood glucose is like over the last 12 weeks. So if that's high, then that's a sign that you're not managing, your glucose so well. And from that, doctors will pick up a pre-diabetic stage. And there's different levels where you would be at a pre-diabetic or full diabetic stage. It can be hard to pick it up, though. I find many people are probably pre-diabetic, but they're not aware of it. It's not being picked up in the bloods too easily. They may not have a lot of the signs and symptoms. So there's a lot of people walking around that are pre-diabetic and possibly could become diabetic before they're even checked. So the blood test will show you, but it's tuning into how you feel, if you're struggling with weight, if you have a lot of those risks, if there's diabetes in your family, or you've had gestational diabetes, high blood pressure, if you're over 45, there's a good few risk factors there. And I always say to people when I see it on their questionnaire, that their parent was diabetic, or brother and sister, I always say to them, have you had blood tests done? Have you had that HbA1C test?
And so what's the hope for the people who there are pre-diabetics? So, okay, that obviously a bit of a diet change and exercise.
Yeah.
And what sort of time we are looking at? So, because I always hear it's hard, but if they say, if I stick to it for a year or 2 or 3 or 5 months or 6 months, and then I can slowly then bring the carbs back. So what is it, the time period they have to sort of prepare for?
Well, I think you'll see changes. I think you'll certainly see changes within 6 weeks, 12 weeks, you'll see changes. And a great way for you to know if you are seeing changes is maybe to use a continuous glucose monitor for a while, and you can get these online. I remember not so long ago, Abbott were giving them out for free. So if you go onto abbott.com and see, are they still doing that? You stick it on your arm, connect it to your phone. It will show you how you deal with every single meal and food and snack and food that you're eating. It's a brilliant tool. I think all pre-diabetics should be using them and seeing for themselves, how well they deal with carbs. And you'll see the blood spikes if you have a bowl of pasta, or if you have a piece of meat and some veg, you're going to see a different response,
Yeah,
So
a very good tool for people to understand, because when you see the curve on the little screen or on your phone, you really understand, okay, I know what I ate, I know I react to this way. It's so much more understandable than as opposed to somebody telling you, a pasta is going to have a big effect
yeah,
on your blood sugar. It's going to give you big spike. And
everybody's
yeah, and then the other thing, I actually recently met somebody, and he was asking me for advice, and then I said, obviously, I can only tell my own experience, but I'm on paper, I'm not type 2, but he's pre-diabetic. And I just said, what I did to manage my blood sugars. And maybe about 3 months ago, I met him, and then he said, I was only recently told. And then I have met him again last week, and I asked him how's things are going, and he says, well, not much changed. So what are the hope for those who they're not willing to put in the change when they are told they have pre-diabetes?
Well, I mean, if they don't make some changes, they will become diabetic. Um, so, and it is a serious health condition with so many other health issues can arise from it. So I think it has to be taken seriously. That your simple diet changes, balancing the carbs and getting some exercise. And knowing when to exercise. It's the small little things, but just being consistent with it. I've had clients, and they were checking their blood sugars, and they were monitoring, and they would see, okay, if they have apple tart in the afternoon as a snack, yes, they're going to get a spike. But then they would see, okay, and I said to them, okay, have the apple tart another day, but then go for a walk for 20 minutes and see what happens. And they did that, and they realized they didn't get the spike. So then when they realized, okay, those simple little hacks that they could just add into their day, and they could still have the little treats.
And what would you say about, and the frequency of meals? Would you eat more often and smaller portions, or would you say fasting is good? Would you say not to eat after a certain time of the day, if possible, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, fasting can be great. I don't think it needs to be a strict fast. But I mean, I think, if you finish at 8 o'clock at night and then don't eat till eight in the morning, or maybe 9 or 10, it might suit some people. It depends. It can be easier for men to fast than women, I find. Women with hormones and the cycle, it can be a bit harder. But it doesn't need to be a strict fast. No, it doesn't. I mean, we want to cut out the late snacking. We don't want to be snacking on sweet things in the evening. So we should be cutting them out. And then trying to eat our three meals a day. Maybe if there's a long gap in the afternoon, maybe you need a snack. So it depends on your.
And what would you recommend for snacking? So, when you feel like, oh my God, I'm hungry, but I know I should be eating this, and I don't want to go into the petrol station and pick up a chocolate bar. What should I pick up if I feel like I need something, but I don't want to mess this up?
Yeah, well, look, I say to my pre-diabetic clients, they'll say, can I have a piece of fruit? And I'll say, you can have a piece of fruit, but let's have a small apple, a small pear, or some berries. The berries are ideal. They're low sugar. Let's combine the bit of fruit with some nuts, maybe a small handful of nuts, or even I've had clients do very well on a slice of cheese and some fruit, or some Greek yogurt and fruit and some nuts, or a bit of dark. If you want a bit of chocolate, a bit of dark chocolate, but add in the protein there. So like the nuts, the dark chocolate and nuts go well together. The Greek yogurt, the higher protein yogurt, with the berries and a few walnuts on top. I mean, that's a nice snack for the afternoon. So if you combine the bit of sweetness with something that's protein rich, it is going to balance the blood sugars for you.
Okay. That's really good. I used to, even today now, like I'm hooked on pistachios lately now, but I used to buy the mixed nuts in Lidl, and I would eat that all the time. Yeah, and like that. And if I had no time, I run into Lidl and get a pack of ham and cheese and pair them up, and then I with the fruits, I still can't eat much carbs. They just don't do me. Maybe a little bit of blueberries, raspberries, but
Yeah.
I handle them. Okay, really good. Is there anything else you think we should really mention and we haven't touched on it yet?
We've covered the signs and symptoms, the risk factors, a
As
little
a
bit of
question, I just remembered that now because uh, my little one goes to the toilet a lot, and people said it to me, you know, you just have to check her. So, urinating a lot, would that be a sign? Now she's a mad watermelon eater, so the reason usually behind it watermelon, and people don't really know what she ate, you know, in the morning and running to the toilet like 10 times within an hour. But would that be a sign?
so peeing a lot. Yes, that can be a sign being really thirsty. You know, watermelon is quite a sweet fruit as well. Um, so I mean, look at I suppose type 2 is more common in older, you know, older children or certainly adults. But I mean, it's good to be looking at signs and symptoms in the family. You know, when you have it there with your grandmother and you had it during pregnancy, you know. But yeah, looking after the signs and symptoms and always asking that to be checked in, you know, whatever blood test that anyone's going in for, that's done. I think it's a really important one to have done because people don't always pick up on the signs. So,
Okay.
you know, we mightn't always go very often to the doctor, and it can be hard to get into the doctor and these days. But I think it's an important one to request, you know, with the doctor or with the nurse.
And so just a little thing just to scare people a little bit. What would be the effect of not looking after yourself and not minding your diet and not changing your diet and habits when you are told you're pre-diabetes? Yes, I know you're going to get diabetes, but what other symptoms or what other serious health issues come with it? Because I think often people don't really
Yeah,
realize.
I mean, if you're diabetic, you know, you're certainly more at risk of heart disease.
Mm.
But also, you know, it's the peak in those, that the blood sugar peak affects the blood vessels, and that can affect the blood vessels in the heart, but in the eyes. So eye health can be affected. You know, affects the blood vessels in the legs. Where more wound healing is harder. So you have to be very careful with cuts. You can be more prone to ulcers. And you know, people lose. You know, I've had clients that have lost toes, you know, because they didn't care for themselves and cuts and things on their legs, and they weren't watching their diet. Now there is great medication, but diet changes has to be part as well as the medication.
I have to say, I'm very happy to see most people now, to be honest with you, they would say, okay, I'm going to try and manage this with my diet as opposed to taking a pill and not to
Mhm.
care about diet. But there's another thing which I only only now, since I understand all this, and I have been through it sort of myself as well. And there was actually another person in my life who went through this and didn't really care about being diabetic, is the mental changes, which I didn't understand growing up beside my grandmother, who changed from a lovely granny into something very different. And you know, she had her mental health definitely very seriously was affected. She had ideas in her head which they never existed. She yeah, I think well, I don't know if it's I part of, because then I met somebody else who was similar age, maybe a little bit younger, and just didn't care about diabetes and never really they took the medication but ate whatever he wanted. But also his mental health, and because of that, his mental health, his family suffered, and everybody suffered around him. And that, I don't think that's something we talk a lot about, it unmanaged diabetes, how it can affect your brain.
Yeah, and it has a huge burden on the healthcare in Ireland as well. 10% of healthcare spend in Ireland is on diabetes care, you know. And as you get older, you know, you will need more care. So it is quite a serious condition, but it can be all turned around at the early stages when you're made aware of it, you know. So it's tuning into the signs and symptoms, or looking out for the person you're living with, you know, your family member, tuning into their signs and symptoms. You know, are they getting up every night, peeing 10 times during the day? Are they getting infections? Is the wound healing very poor? Are they
And
tired of?
Yeah, and obviously if they are told they are pre-diabetes, don't show up with a donut or a slice of cake because that's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So they just need simple changes can be, sometimes we think we have to make so many big changes that it's just going to be too hard. But it's the small, I find it's the small little 1% change we make throughout the day at each meal, each snack, that we can be consistent and makes overall the biggest change in our lives.
Perfect. And it was so lovely to talk to you. And then I think we are at 28 minutes, so I shouldn't keep it longer. Though we had loads of people watching, I think even a lot more than last time. It's a very interesting topic and it's a very, very serious topic. And I do meet a lot of people who are going through it, either pre-diabetes or diabetes. And I often feel they're very hopeless because they go to a diabetes clinic, and I don't want to talk against diabetes clinic at all, but they don't necessarily get the right support, and, and they hope miracles from there. But I think a nutritional therapist is so much better support if you have diabetes, or yeah. So definitely, like I didn't know anything like when I had problems with it. I obviously didn't know you. I didn't know anybody else in this area, and then I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna have to try and by try and error sort of figure out what works for me. Okay, so Cathriona, tell us where people can find you.
So you can get in touch with me through my website, cathriona So you can email me and fill in the form for my 20-minute health review, and we can have a chat about pre-diabetes there if anyone is concerned, or they find themselves thinking about some of the signs and symptoms here, and just want to have a talk around it. We can do that. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, or cathriona And I'll also the Wellness and Vitality Fair. So this is a really important thing to mention. Network Roscommon, Network Ireland, the Roscommon branch, which we're both a member of, and that's how we met, are holding their second Wellness and Vitality Fair in the lovely Strokestown House on the 13th of October, and tickets are available now, and the early bird price of €35 is still available. I'll be speaking about menopause, and there'll be different talks about, there's going to be some Reiki discussions, there's going to be mindfulness, breath work, yoga, there's going to be yoga as well. There's going to be 12 different speakers, there's about 20 different stands there. So it's a big event. This is our second event, and it's going to be much bigger than last year.
And I have to say, last year was amazing, and if it's going to be bigger, it's going to be even better. And I'm so sad I'm going to miss it, but I'll be on holidays. But if anybody goes to that, and I highly, highly recommend, it's an amazing event, and we will be there as well. So myself,
your stand,
not really, but the products and one of my staff, and
yes, we can try your products.
Absolutely. So if there's anyone there who needs some help, we will be very happy to help with high fiber, high protein options as opposed to the sugary stuff. Yeah, I'm going to stick the link for the Wellness and Vitality Fair under here. I'm going to put your contact details under here as well. And I thank you again for joining me for the second time. I really enjoyed that. I think this was a really informative talk again, and I hope we have raised awareness, and I'm hoping people are going to start taking it a little bit more seriously, because there are still a few out there who just say, oh yeah, that's going to pass, but that's not going to pass if you don't change something. And thank you so much, and looking forward to see you sometimes. And thank you. And I'm just going to say another little thing, what's coming up on Wednesday. So Wednesday, I'm going to have another live, 8 o'clock in the evening. And we sort of staying with the topic, but we will be talking about type 1 diabetes on Wednesday. And I'm going to have a lovely young lady here who is herself a type 1 diabetic, and she's a diabetes coach. And so it's 8 o'clock Wednesday evening live again. Cathriona, I really appreciate all the support and all your knowledge and all the time you gave to us. And thanks very much. And good night, everyone. Thank you for watching.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye now.